About the do's and the don'ts, the when and the why you need a UX audit, along with how to make it the most efficient use of your team's time. First, we'll start with introductions. I'm Cheryl Little, Director of the User Experience at Media Current. I've been there for a little over 4 years. I've been creating art and design my entire life. I began in the world of print back in the olden days, moved into product design, physical products like toys and souvenirs, and I moved into digital products about 12 years ago.
And I am Becky Sharpick. I'm a user experience and user interface designer. I've been designing for Drupal for about 13 years. I specialize in accessibility. I do some digital strategy. And I primarily design complicated interfaces, user experiences, branded experiences with branching and multiple possibilities for the results, like personalized and customizable content. And we represent Media Current. Our headquarters are in Atlanta, Georgia. We've been doing Drupal since 2007. We are a full-service agency. We do strategy, design, and development. And we are a top contributor to Drupal.org.
So today we'll talk about the search for good usability, what usability standards are, where they come from, how to make a UX audit effective, how to collect quantitative data, how to collect qualitative data, and how to report the findings. The search for good usability. What is it? Why bother? And how can it help? Usability is the ease of use and learnability of a human-made object, such as a tool or a device. That's the actual definition. So, do you think this looks usable? Would you want to get in this boat and go for a ride with this impending storm that's headed your way? Do you think the light would stay lit for very long? Do you think you'd be able to see anything? What if you had crutches or you're in a wheelchair? How are you going to even get in the boat? Usability is obviously really important, and sometimes it can be a matter of surviving an experience. Fortunately for us in the world of web design, we usually don't create experiences that are life or death situations. But either way, usability is really important, and the values that we use to define usability can apply to both a boat and the user experience.
So what defines good usability? Well, usability, usefulness, is it a desirable item, experience, or brand? Is the information findable? Is there credibility to the organization? Is it accessible to all users, and is it inclusive?
This is Enrique. Now, he loves his boat, and alternative to that other boat we saw earlier, he finds his boat both useful and usable. It has plenty of room, it's pleasant to look at, it's well made of sturdy wood, and he trusts it even during bad weather since it's well taken care of. It has a great navigation system, and it's also easy to steer. When he brings his mother along for a ride, it's easy for her to access in her wheelchair, and it's got great night light when it gets dark. Enrique's boat is the perfect example of good usability. The quality of user's experience when interacting with the product is about its effectiveness, its efficiency, and its overall user satisfaction.
So why audit the usability of a website? Well, we look to assess the unconscious emotional factors at play, as well as to determine if the conscious mind of the user is able to easily orient itself within the system, learn it, and complete multiple persona-based journeys with ease.
A large cruise ship is a great example of when a consistent user experience is essential. Both usability and the pleasure experience on a cruise can be affected by misguided expectations or lack of standards. Also in the world of website design, whether it's one site or a bunch of sites under the same brand, a consistent user experience is always key. Analyzing the UX of your website against internationally accepted standards for human-computer interaction, or HCI, can help you determine its ability to meet intended user paths and reach your business goals. Taking a closer look at quantitative and qualitative data gives us the information needed to provide recommendations for increased conversions, the implementation of best practices for maximum inclusiveness, and to proactively incorporate industry trends.
So why is the UX audit important? Well, we scrutinize the site from a number of different angles. We assess its consistency. We listen to the brand voice. We look at the visuals. We do a light accessibility check. We audit responsivity. And post-analysis, we put together recommendations.
What questions can we answer in a UX audit? First of all, it's really important to point out that a UX audit is not a remedy for all the site's UX woes. It's ineffective if the recommendations are not actionable and they're not acted on. It also requires a significant investment of time and labor. A UX audit is a great way to uncover the most impactful user experiences issues to prioritize iterative improvements. What's working, what's not working? What can easily be solved for, and what will require more of an investment to improve? Which metrics are we collecting, and what should we be collecting? Same with data. But it's already been tried about, and what impact did those have on the metrics that we had? And how can we improve the site for inclusivity? Designing usable systems requires far more than simply applying standards and guidelines. They can still make a significant contribution to usability by promoting consistency and good practice. Good UX really does matter. We know that 75% of visitors admit to making a judgment on a company's credibility based on the look and feel of their website. 8 out of 10 customers will stop engaging with content that doesn't display well on their mobile or tablet device. It only takes 50 milliseconds for a user to form an opinion about your website and decide if they want to stick around. So there are usability standards. What are they, and where do they come from?
So imagine a World Wide Web where there are no standards at all. Everyone does what they want, however they want, without any rhyme or reason or established protocol or process. You visit a website, and each time it takes several minutes to figure out where the navigation is located or what text is a link, the familiar things we take for granted. Without standards for usability, our websites would lack consistent or intuitive user interfaces, much like this boat dock.
Or alternatively, this boat dock with good usability that has had some standards applied to it. Over the past 15 years, a comprehensive range of international standards have been developed to define the general principles and best practices for user-centered design. International standards for HCI and usability includes a large body of empirical research on the usability and specific HCI design functions and features. Many recommendations have emerged from these findings and have been incorporated into standard documents that are available. Most of the standards specify general principles rather than precise details of interface designs. Who writes the rules? A lot of people from organizations around the world help us develop these standards. They come in a range of categories. International Organization for Standardization, there's national standards, there's an American National Standards Institute, there's other countries such as Great Britain, Italy, and Holland who are actively working on usability standards. Military and other government agencies like the DoD and NASA have their own usability standards. Commerce and industry, like Macintosh and Windows, they have their own guidelines. And independent agencies like ISO and ANSI standards for computer products.
So how do we set up for a successful and effective UX audit? So as with any project, there should be an agreed-upon plan at the outset. What are our audit goals? What's the primary, secondary, tertiary goals? Are we trying to increase ROI, conversions, form field completions? We want a time limit. The audit process could, in theory, go on forever, so we set clear time and scope limits. And we define the resources to determine how much will be dedicated to the audit in terms of workforce and project budget. And when do we conduct a UX audit? Well, timing is everything. We could do it at the beginning of a website redesign. Sometimes we want to grow and evolve a product or a website. Sometimes we find, based on analytics, users are getting stuck somewhere, or we know that there's existing issues and we want to systematically address them. So an example UX audit we'll be referring to today was done for USC Libraries, LA as Subject Initiative. So this project acts as a collection of historical and cultural resources specific to Los Angeles and the surrounding area. It connects researchers with archivists and collections of materials for study. So we came in as a third party, and the site had been built by their in-house developers. So we audited the usability of 3 selected pages to prepare for a redesign for those pages. So the scope was limited to efficiently utilize the budgeted funds. We only selected 4 total usability questions from our set of over 250, and we resourced judiciously. We chose a primary auditor a digital strategist to provide data and consultation on which 40 questions to prioritize, and a secondary auditor to peer review the primary auditor's findings.
So what kind of team should conduct the audit? First of all, it should always be someone from outside of the project. We don't want to have anybody that doesn't have any distance, that does have distance from the product. Otherwise, they will have prejudices that will hamper and maybe weigh the results one way or the other. The size of the team can vary depending on the size of the depth of the website and how much budget you have, honestly. Smaller audits can be performed from one person. Sometimes they'll take a few days. There can also be larger teams that can audit a larger site. And it's really great when you can combine a team of cross-functional people like a developer, a strategist, and a UX designer to all audit the system together, because that's like everybody has their own perspective and can identify issues. There's some don'ts that we don't want to do when we conduct a UX audit. Don't ever assume that you know what they're thinking. Don't assign the audit to anyone directly involved with the project. And don't be biased when you're conducting the audit. Try to put yourself in the user's shoes. The do's of conducting a UX audit is that you want to try to give yourself the motivations of your users and have empathy with them of where they're coming from, understanding their personas. Keep your timeline. Don't get carried away and just keep going on and on. Make sure you set it and stick with it. Do a light content audit as you're doing your usability audit. You can also uncover inconsistencies and duplications in content. And conduct contextual testing. It helps you experience connection speeds. And make sure there's a consistent UX throughout the website's ecosystem. A bird's eye view of the UX audit process. It begins with the quantitative data collection, which helps us determine exactly what is going to get audited. Then we went to qualitative data collection, where we review all the 9 categories, determine which questions we're going to ask. There's like 250 questions total. And then we want to report on the findings with evidence-supported recommendations. So quantitative data collection, how to determine what gets audited. So the most important and difficult steps in a UX audit are often at the very beginning. We want to determine what we're going to audit based on our analytics. If the audit is being conducted on a website that you have access to the Google Analytics, the best approach is to begin by finding out some key information from the available data. Gather a list of pages based on certain questions to determine the best pages to include in your review of the site. Be sure to go back far enough in the analytics to recognize trends instead of basing your audit on isolated data points. Let's look at a few data questions we can ask. What pages get the most organic traffic? The pages that get the most organic traffic are oftentimes the best for usability. Is there something different on these pages than the other pages that makes them more appealing? Does the strategist or the client have any ideas to hypothesize why this might be happening? What pages have the highest bounce rate? Oftentimes these are the ones with the worst usability. Can we determine why that may be happening? Does the strategist or the client on the project have an idea why this might be happening? And then what are the top exit pages for organic traffic? Problem children are often found in the last page visited. No data? There are some things we can do. If we can't access the analytics, the pages selected for the audit should be based on the type of site it is and what the goals are. Does the site provide a library of information? Well, we want to look at search functionality, and navigation will obviously be very important for usability. If it's an e-commerce site, things like the checkout process and the product pages obviously would be areas we would want to look at. If it's a higher education site, what is the user journey? Is there a sign-up? Fallbacks are the home page, top-level landing pages, the about page, and some detail pages can also give you areas to uncover usability issues. But review the site, list the pages that's going to help you determine the most valuable things that you can review. The number of pages will be based on the size of the site and the budget or time that you have available.
So I'll note that on the LA as subject audit, we targeted 3 specific pages and data was only relevant to one of them. Our stakeholder interviews and our user interviews that the stakeholders did for us and communicated to us secondhand, but it was still good to have that information. They talked to the members and reported their findings. And the members are the personas for which we were primarily trying to improve the experience. They have editorial access to their own profiles, and they wanted to better engage the community. So we also considered the end users as we attempted to create a more usable system for the members to engage the community.
Qualitative data collection, one usability step at a time. Let's look at how this works. It's all about the user's perspective. Once you have the key data points around the pain points and the pages with potentially good usability indicators, it's time to begin a cognitive walkthrough of the website to see the things from the user's perspective. Try to achieve the same goals as a user would. Identify potential obstacles along the way and document everything. What things should we consider when we're conducting a UX audit? During a UX audit, we apply standard usability guidelines that can significantly contribute to usability by promoting consistency, accessibility, and UX best practices. Here are the usability categories that we look at. The home page, for example, does the home page create a positive first impression would be a question we might ask. Task orientation. Can the users complete common tasks quickly and efficiently? Navigation and architecture. Is there a convenient and obvious way to move between related pages and sections of the website? These other categories include forms and data entry, trust and credibility, writing and content quality, visual design and page layout, search, help, feedback, and error tolerance. After reviewing and asking all these questions on the pages that we identify, we score the website by answering all of these questions and score everything by giving them a compliance score. A positive one complies, a negative one doesn't comply, and a 0 either sort of complies or doesn't apply.
And I'll note that in the background, behind the scenes of all this, we have a spreadsheet that has all 250 questions, and when we only choose a certain number of them, we just highlight those, and we use that worksheet to track our findings as we conduct the audit, and then later on, when we report the findings to the client, this is the form it looks like. It takes on, though we do allow them access to the spreadsheet, and we'll share that later also. But for an example, from the questions used on the LAS subject audit for their selected pages, for example, question 11 we selected to pull one of these out. The question is, are there activities allocated to the user of the system that take full advantage of the strengths of each? And that was a score of negative because no. The answer was no, and we noted that predictive search functionality would be beneficial and that there was an error on the Maps interface. And then for an example under the category of forms and data entry, question number 27, how do the forms display on mobile devices? And that was a place where we could note that the list of filters was very long, the letters were very tiny targets, and there was unnecessary white space found on the landing page. Now for trust and credibility, we did find very many positives. There was a lot of information, background information about the company, like a physical address, documentation, their strategic plan, charter, meeting minutes, and bios for committee and board members. So there's a lot of trust and credibility built there. And for search, one of the questions we asked was question number 6. If no results are returned, does the system offer ideas or options for improving the query based on identifiable problems with the user's input? And that was a negative score because there was nothing returned when the search results were null. And under help, feedback, and error tolerance, we found another positive. Question number 16, do the pages load quickly? Our tests reveal that the directory landing page loaded in under 1 second. And here's a look at the final score. Overall, it was negative 18. And they had negatives overall in all categories, especially for search, which was our area of focus. And we did have a positive in the trust and credibility area.
And now for the report part. We got to report on these findings. We want to provide evidence-supported recommendations instead of just saying we think you should do this because it's our gut feeling. We want to know, why do the users act as they do instead of the way the stakeholders want them to? After mining data insights and documenting the findings from the audit, it's time to develop the hypothesis about the website's user experience status. You should compare the insights you garnered against the following 4 keystones of a successful website UX. Relevance. Does the website address a user's pain point? Value prop. Is the value of to the user clear and convincing? Usability. Is it intuitive? Do the users understand what they're supposed to be doing? And actions. Are they going to act on anything that you provide incentive for doing that?
So finally, our data-driven recommendations for UX improvements are ready to be written. The key is to make recommendations themselves as user-friendly as possible. So we emphasize the positive, we express any failing grades very tactfully, and we avoid insider user experience professional jargon, and we're as specific as we can be. We supplement the recommendations with examples instead of just identifying areas for general change. We provide items that can be addressed immediately with a low level of effort, and we pull them out as quick wins, and then we create a roadmap for improvements that they could make over time. And these are some examples of the more high-level questions that an audit sets out to answer. It's good to set the stage with items like these so we can talk about what are the users looking for, what's working, what needs to be improved, what are the goals. So our LAS subject audit, we let out with positives that we observed, pulling out the prominence of the search, the trust and credibility, and the site speed that we observed. And then we took a high-level look at the areas of improvement, the search interface, the page layout, and discoverability of content. And then to accompany those more dry, detailed pages containing the usability questions, scores, and notes, we included these pages with positives, negatives, and visuals to tie it all together. So this slide is for the navigation information architecture category, so we include what works. And an example from that is that the navigation was functional for users of assistive technology when we did a light accessibility review. Then as another example, under forms and data entry, we showed a visual of the lengthy drop-down menu, noting that it was especially overwhelming for mobile users. For search, we highlighted several areas for improvement, including suggesting that users be provided with a way to clear filters, that predictive search functionality be brought in, and that the alphabetical filters be removed. The end result of our UX audit for LA's subject member directory search landing page, results page, and member profile pages was a detailed set of findings. We were able to clearly express these to the stakeholders, and due to our methodical analysis techniques and diplomatic delivery of the findings, our research was well received, and with our design rationale validated, clearly stated, and accepted, the subsequent design and approval process was very quick and smooth, and I don't believe there were any revisions. So here are some before and after images for the 3 pages that we reviewed, and some highlights of the enhancements that we included based on our research. I'll just call out a few here for the directory landing page. We designed a landing page that, rather than simply listing all possible search results by default, delivers a content-rich page with multiple areas of discoverable content, such as events, collections, members, and a new system we suggested for pulling out topics. Then for the search results, we brought the filters over to the right sidebar and even included a location-based filter, and we made the listing style more engaging, highlighting the most relevant fields for the users rather than just simply including the short summary. And then for the member profile pages, we grouped the details below logical section headings and collapsed them into sections expandable with accordions, and freed up space to highlight key content to introduce more visuals and discoverable content, including the optional hero, a collections, gallery, events, blog posts, and related organizations.
So, in summary, the power of the UX audit is to give us a collection of standards against which to test a user experience like a website. It's methodical, it's even scientific. Well, as scientific as design can get. It stands shoulder to shoulder with other data, and it can inform further data collection and help direct user research. Most importantly, it allows the highest priorities to surface. It gives us a roadmap for iterative improvements to the website later, and as we saw with LA as a subject, a very detailed creative brief for a redesign, and even the beginnings of plans for content improvements and added functionality. When we begin armed with audit goals from the stakeholders and with the insights that the data, user personas, and other strategic information can provide, we can take these usability questions and fully interrogate an experience digging deep to discover usability gold, much like diving into the ocean depths up to sunken pirate ship.
To find
Treasure. So we'll make this audit worksheet available for y'all at the end. We'll post it on our session. If you guys would like to download it, you could use it to conduct your own usability audit. Do you guys have any questions? Yes.
I have two questions, actually, kind of tied back to each other. The first is, when you did your audit, was it only on the desktop version of the site? And also, how did that affect the mobile, if it did? As well as, I work in the public sector, so we maintain a rather heavy site with a lot of traffic. So accessibility is a big issue. So what are the main key points to look for when we are auditing for accessibility and making sure that we're addressing all those pain points as well?
I can take that. Do you want me to, should I repeat it for that?
Oh, yeah.
For the recording? Okay. So the questions were accessibility. How do we audit for accessibility? Like what's a light accessibility audit consist of? That's a big question, but I'll answer that. And the first one was
the mobile, if you audit also.
Okay,
If we look
mobile.
at mobile and tablet.
Yes. So the answer is yes. We did look at mobile and tablet and desktop from the perspective of design. And then for accessibility, we only look at the desktop. We test on desktop, though it's applicable to mobile.
We also conduct full accessibility audits, so that would be conducted in a different project probably, like if it was a full accessibility audit. And then we do look at all of that.
Yeah, if I'm doing a light accessibility audit, I'll do a little automated testing to like get a feel for what to look for, and then I'll do a little manual testing with like JAWS or NVDA to try and see if the menus work. That's a basic thing and look for things that are interactive, like drop-down menus or any kind of interactive functionality, and see if those things work, because a lot of times that's where it fails. Just check those basic functionalities, and if something doesn't work, definitely report that for further investigation.
We also test all the colors that are being used for like the buttons and things, and make sure there's enough contrast there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a follow-up question. Sorry. Thank you.
Sure.
And just to follow up on that again, so once you have done your audit and you presented your solution, now how did you follow up on that to make sure that the solution that you have proposed was the most effective? Do you have some data-driven points as well as a result of all the changes that you've made, and to be able to determine if those were indeed the best solutions for the problems?
That's a good question. Yes, this was a rather recent project, so we haven't gone back to revisit the difference that it made. But yes, that's a very good thing to do after you've done the audit and all of the things have been acted upon, to go back and revisit to make sure that it's made a difference in your data.
Yes, and as you're structuring the audit, it depends on the scope, but you can come up with like KPIs against which to measure the changes that you make. So sometimes we'd include that in a larger scope audit.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, the audit worksheet, did you guys come up with that, or did you get that from some source? And then I'm also wondering, when you rate things on that worksheet, do certain things count more than others?
Nothing counts. They all receive equal value. We created the worksheet on our own based on a lot of other research that we had done through usability. There's also several other research resources available with other worksheets. So we kind of took a lot of those elements and used that to create our own that we felt was the most effective. We also add a lot of accessibility questions in there that weren't in there originally, because we were very much advocates for accessibility and care a lot about it. So a lot of those categories include those questions. Sure.
Awesome topic. We practice similar audits, and I was curious. You talked a little bit about using certain tools like Google Analytics. Is there any other tools that you use to get a better understanding, such as videos, maybe recordings, or heat maps, scroll maps? And if so, how do you use that? The other question I have is, how long do you conduct this audit? do you have a set time? I have other questions. Maybe I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Well, we try to always gather the data, the analytics. If the analytics aren't available, we can always do lots of other things like heat maps are that they can give you a certain amount of information. The data is always, in my opinion, the best source to figure out where the problems are happening. And like she was saying, like interviews with your users, and there's all kinds of other like surveys and other things you can use to gather information. So you just have to get creative if you don't have the data available.
Right. And that was pretty much my runner-up question of the interviews. Do you ever conduct a user testing or like a little focus group with the specific audience, and if so, do you find it helpful?
Videos of them showing a video of someone using the website is very helpful because you can, especially if they're telling you what they're thinking when they're going through the process. As far as focus groups go, that can tend to have a bunch of people, one person makes a statement, then everybody targets on that statement. So they all kind of follow along with the herd, so to speak. So it's better to have those conversations isolated instead of in a group setting.
Yeah, I would say I like individual interviews a little bit better. You can get a lot of information by asking very general, not leading questions. What do you like the best? What would you change if you could change any one thing? Things like that. And then you can do a number of them. And I believe the sweet spot's like 8 to 10, 7 to 12, somewhere around there. And once you get that many number of interviews done, you kind of get a lot of repetition. So it's like that's a good sampling for those up close and personal interviews.
Thank you.
I was thinking about when you mentioned in your do's and don'ts, you said have someone from the outside do the audit. And it got me thinking that really, like, if we have a site that we're working on, we should all be thinking about these things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way, like, we should be kind of we should be able to do our own audit, but it seems like an outside person may see things that we have blinders on for that we're not seeing. So I think in the app, I just want to make an observation that it seems like in the absence of an external audit, it seems like an internal audit would be useful, but it just might miss some things.
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
A UX audit of any kind is better than none at all.
Yeah. And I would add that that's the case I find with accessibility audits. If a company is launching a new site, it's best to have a third party come in and audit the site before it's live, because the folks who worked on it are sometimes too close to see the errors that they've made.
Hi. Thank you for the talk. And I have also two questions. So the first question, I was in your earlier talk today about designing with components. I wonder if you have any tips on how to do UX audit on components, and rather than like a site level UX audit, how to validate component design.
You could certainly apply those questions to the components themselves, for the most part.
Yes.
I think they obviously have to be live. We wouldn't be looking at obviously just the components themselves in the design phase. So once they're live, you could isolate it, but since we're talking about a user experience, the user doesn't absorb a page they look at the individual components, but they absorb the material all together, right? So when you're conducting an audit, you kind of want to look at all of the things on the page that come together to make that user experience as it is, if that makes sense.
But I would add that if you open up the audit worksheet and kind of look at the questions that are there, like under forms, there's probably a lot of good questions like specific to a form element that you could pull out and interrogate just a form with those questions to see if you have the usability there.
Or like an accordion component, for example, making sure the target's large enough to click on it, making sure it acts like you think it's going to act or is supposed to act when you open it. Mm-hmm. Those kind of questions are in there, so you could, in theory, apply all of those individually to a component.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to follow up on that a little bit. So for a design system that supports multiple websites or applications and have, I guess, like different contexts, there a systematic way to evaluate, like, I guess, with or without the context, with the context of each implementation?
I think there's certain questions you can probably ask without the context, but I think some of the questions you kind of require it, like in the areas of trust and credibility, for example. There's a lot of those questions that I don't think you could really apply individually to just a system, right? It's more about what the content that's included.
Yeah, if I was going to audit a system that was supposed to work across multiple websites, I'd want to look at least a number of those websites, maybe not all of them, but a representative number of them, and see how it was applied across all. And then that would be a good way to assess the system's applicability to all those circumstances and feel the user experience from all those different perspectives.
And sorry, second question. You talked about using survey and Google Analytics. Do you also use like SuScore or NPS, and do you find them helpful?
No, I don't personally. We don't use them ourselves. No. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you guys very much. We'll be posting this later. No, I'll do this when I get back.
What's that?
I'll post the photograph.
You want me? I said, do you want me to? You want to post?